Fishing Trail Buddy Bass Tournament. Uh,
It,
Man, that was a lot of fun. There was a lot going on this weekend. We had the paddle and fin crew out there. We had the two tournaments going on. We had the tournament with paddle and fin, had the tournament with the Buddy Bass, and man, it was a hot day of fishing, man. But we caught. I think everybody out there caught some bass.
it was good. Lake Cowan is just absolutely turning out to be a really nice local lake here in the southwestern Ohio area that's really producing some bass. Every time I go up there, I can usually count on getting my limit. That wasn't the case Saturday, but usually Cowan is very, very good for me. But that temperature, boy, it was reaching up into the mid 90s and it was relentless.
The water was hot too. The sun
Yes, it
was hot. The water was hot. And I noticed most of the bass I caught were in that shade. They're just like me and you, buddy. We like to sit under a shade tree on a hot July day, and that's what the bass were doing out at Cowan. And I know some guys, they caught them deep. There's guys that caught them shallow. Man, they were catching bass all over that lake. I imagine a lot of the bigger ones came out of the deeper water. Now, I know we had several options for that tournament. We had Wolf Run, Mogador Reservoir, and Nettle Lake, and then Knox Lake. And I've never fished any of those other lakes besides Cowan.
Right.
Cowan being the closest for me. That's the one I went with. And, of course, they had the paddle and fin whole thing out there. And they had those guys on. And we had Brad Hicks over there. And I think you showed up for it, didn't you?
No, well, my day went absolutely wrong for me. I mean, I didn't even get to get over there and check in with the crew and enjoy the barbecue and all of the demos and stuff. But I had probably one of the worst fishing days physically that I've ever had. I mean, I really bonked because of that heat. And it brings into question a lot, and I'm coming from a history of 41 years of running ultramarathon sports, cycling events and running events, and I'm glad I've had that past experience, because when I noticed about 3:00 in the afternoon, when I was tying on a whopper plopper, I don't often use whopper ploppers, but suddenly I came to I prior to that, I was feeling very exhausted and dehydrated, and kind of coming in out a couple times, got in the shade, recovered some. And my buddy Dawson Thompson, who was on my team, was just killing it. He was up there in the top 5 for the longest time, and I was on the other side of the lake. Well, they have all them sailboats, right? If you get caught on the wrong side of the lake with those sailboats, it's like taking, a domestic hamster and turning them loose in Times Square. You're trying to get through those sailboats. And so I had to go all the way around the island and come back around. He didn't give me very good direction. So I put in about a mile of cranking it pretty hard. So when I did a sort of a flyby of the paddle and fin crew up there giving the demos and yelled at everybody, but they were all busy doing what they did. By the time I got to Dawson, I was tanked, and this was about 2:30 in the afternoon, and I could feel myself bonking at that time. Got in the shade and recovered, came back out in the sun, started hitting this bank again. He had a pattern going that was really on fire for him. He just kept, calling his limit out. Wow. And doing really well. That was his first kayak bass fishing tournament. I just invited him out to do it like 3 days prior to that. And I took him out in the pond with that Hobie Pro Angler 14 the day before. And for the first time he ever netted a fish, brought it up, put it on a hog trout, measured it, took a picture of it. So I took him through all of that so it would be familiar to him. And he just crushed it. That kid is going to be something to watch out for, because he knows how to catch fish. But I recovered a little bit, but by the time I looked down and I saw that I was tying a whopper plopper onto a 4.5-foot finesse rod, I knew something wasn't right. I was trying to tie this knot, and I was like, wait a minute, I've tied this 1,000 times, I forgot. So my mind was already starting to go, dude, this is going out. This is getting bad, getting close to a medical emergency here. So I got myself back to the truck, and I apologize now, but I laid evidence all over that parking lot that somebody was sick there. And I passed out in my truck for probably 3 hours. I passed out and slept till the end of the tournament. But I'll tell you, we don't think of kayak bass fishing as a quote strenuous sport. You know, it looks very relaxing. It's casual. You're out there in your kayak and it's a beautiful day and you're having the best time of your life. But I'll tell you what, man, 16-hour tournament in hot sun like that is dangerous. And boy, a big shout out right now to the kayak anglers who are listening to this. Please dehydrate yourself a couple days in advance, a good day in advance of those type of tournaments that you're going to be out there where those temperatures are going to be hot. Because when it goes bad, I was so lucky to be able to get from that point back to my truck. I don't even remember loading my kayak. And there's a few things involved when you're doing that. I don't even remember doing it. I remember I woke up in the truck. And I'm like, wow, it's like 9:30. I'm calling Dawson, asking where he's at, and he's still trying to bang it out there and, keep getting calling his limit. But that was tough. So big shout out, man. Make sure you get yourself dehydrated on those situations. But that was a wake up call for me too. And I thought I had already done all of that, but man, that was a rough one.
Yeah, man, don't ever push yourself too far. That was very hot. I know it was pushing 90 degrees. And that's awesome. You got a young man involved in kayak fishing, especially his first tournament.
Yeah.
Second day out on a kayak doing a tournament, man. That's amazing. I know me and Chris Anderson, he's the new co-host of Yak Legion. He couldn't make this episode tonight. He's got some personal things came up. But, me and him teamed up for that. And he was also on Brad Hicks' team, and they were competing in the paddle and fin tournament, and I was competing with Chris in the Buddy Bass tournament. And we came up about 80 inches between us. I know around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, man, I had that sun beating down on me all day. I probably drank 2 gallons of water and didn't have to use the bathroom all day. It came out my skin, man. You know what I mean? I sweated it out. If I was drinking Gatorade, I'd swear I'd be bleeding red and purple along the course of my skin, because that's how much I was intaking water and expelling water. And, I'm a big guy, so I sweat a lot, and that was awful brutal. At about 2 o'clock, I was done for the day. I was satisfied with catching some nice bass and having fun with friends. And, that's one thing I love about these events is the Buckeye Trail seems to refer to them more as events than tournaments, because they do a lot of other fun stuff. And I just enjoy participating and hopefully getting, lucky and trying my hardest to get my better scores on each tournament. But yeah, man, that was a lot of fun. And I know Buckeye Trail has another tournament coming up this weekend, the 13th at Raccoon Creek.
Yep, a lot of people talking about that.
Yeah. They just released today that for a raffle prize, they're going to give away a Jackson Kraken. Jackson kayak freaking Kraken, man. Release the Kraken.
Wow, that's I'm good at raffles too, So that would almost be worth a cannonball run from Orlando, Florida back to Raccoon Creek to just have a grab at that. So is that's the new Kraken kayaks? Who's making that kayak now?
Jackson Kayak.
Jackson Kayak. Wow.
So I know you're going to be in Orlando at ICAST, right? That's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm going to learn a lot about the kayaks. I'm still getting all that stuff together. Who's what and when and where. There's so many. I mean, the sport's just exploding. And I believe for me and you, we're right here in the front of it and just really going to watch this thing wave out for the next 5 or 10 years. But I'm super excited to get down to ICAST. I'll be leaving like 4 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. So I'll get down there, and I'm only 0.4 miles away from the convention center there at the hotel. So it's like an 18-minute walk. I'm taking my Segway down there, so it's about a 4-minute Segway ride. And Tuesday's a big day because they have a lot of the open out in the lake in front of it. They have a lot of rods tossing and a lot of lures you could test out, things like that, reels. And then Wednesday, we have a big push for the microwave 12 system and the microwave 20 system, the new fly fishing accessory with the microwave guides. And that's going to be in the ICAST, the best of show category, in the new products and stuff like that. That's a real exciting part of ICAST. So we'll be out there hustling up votes for that kind of sale. It'll be sort of like, I guess what you call them well, they have a name for them in Washington, D.C., the folks that get out there and lobbyists. That's what I'll be doing. I'll be a lobbyist for get out there and get the votes on. And then we have the big flip off on Thursday, which is pretty exciting. That's going to be happening around 4:00 p.m. at booth 4026. So if anybody's down there, going to be at ICAST, stop by the big flip off. They got adult beverages and free rod giveaways, Costa Glass sunglass giveaways. They invite a lot of pros to compete in this. And I think Fitzgerald Rods took it last year. So that'll be exciting to see that. And, it's going to blow my mind because I don't know a whole lot about this sport of fishing. This is really new to me. And so I'm just going to eyes wide open, ears wide open. I hope to God I meet Bill Dance. I grew up watching that man, and I would just, I hope to really have the opportunity to talk to some of those greats and see him down there. Clay Dreyer is another human being that I would love to meet, and I hope he's down there. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Clay Dreyer. He's a quadriplegic, and this guy catches more fat bass than anybody I've ever seen. He can tie a knot with his tongue, and that's how he operates. And so he travels the United States, not only catching fish, but talking to kids and church groups and things like that. So I hope to meet that guy. I hope he's down there, and I hope to get a lot of video. And it's going to be exciting, man. It's going to blow my mind. I know it will.
Be cool to see Jimmy Houston. Just watch out holding any bass around him. He might come after you for a kiss.
Oh, yeah. Jimmy, in those great classes, and he's just, just classic greats, that are going to be down there. And I won't know what to do. I'll probably I can usually handle myself pretty good around, the stars. You could say I used to work in the music business way back when in Nashville and out of Austin, Texas. So I'm pretty good around that, but I'm afraid that I might, get a little nervous around Bill Dance. He just, that's the guy I'll get nervous around.
Yeah, you're definitely an interesting guy. I know you're supposed to bring a little friend along on your journey, aren't you?
Well, I was going to take Loomis. Loomis is similar to a Segway. Loomis is a smaller type of, you can imagine a hoverboard that they got now. So it's about the size of a hoverboard, a little bit more industrial. But Loomis, you can not only ride for about 20 miles on a full charge, Loomis will follow you. It'll face recognize you, and it'll follow you through a very busy crowd like ICAST and film everything that you do, and also send it out Wi-Fi. It's your Wi-Fi station too. But I wasn't able to get Loomis able to go down with me. So
I know you told me about that a while back, and I thought that's awesome, man. Have a little robot friend following you around.
Yeah, that was compliments of Segway of OTR. The Garage, but that's a very unique product. They don't have them out right now, and he was just kind of on a borrow, so he's shipping around the country being shown, so I wasn't able to grab him. But if you're interested in Segway tours or electronic bikes or anything, visit the Garage down at OTR and down in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you just started on Paddle and Fin with Brad Hicks. I know you gave a long introduction about yourself. Maybe you don't have to go into all that detail, but I know that what was I going to say? That you've been doing tournaments for several years. You've been started off bicycling, doing marathons, and kind of tell us a little story about how you got into kayak fishing.
Well, it was about 3 years. I had no idea about anything called kayak bass fishing, and this was as of about maybe 3 years ago. And I had competed in ultra marathon running and the cycling for a long time. I had got out of it after 1996. I attempted a transcontinental run across the United States, and much like I had my Forrest Gump moment, where in a town called Bovine, Texas, it's probably the largest cattle field I ever seen in my life. It was literally, I was running 30 miles that day, and it was literally 30 miles long of nothing but cattle. And that was a rough day. So I stopped there and I said, there ain't no money in this. What am I doing? So I had my Forrest Gump moment. I've never completed my transcontinental run, so that always kind of set in the back of my mind. And for about 10 years or so, I lay dormant and I didn't do a lot of anything. And then about 5 years ago, I said, I got to get back into my running. This is killing me. It's where my spirit's at. I've been doing it since I was 14 years old. It keeps me in shape. It's where I love showing up in the morning with just a few select friends who are like-minded. We sit around, have some coffee, and we talk about the event, and then we take off and we all disappear and we don't see each other till the end of the day at this very long event. We come back, and this may sound familiar, and we come back and we hang out and we give the awards and we all go home sore with stories. That's what my events were like, but there's no money in it or anything. I don't even know. I look back now and go, why did I do that kind of stuff for 41 years? But about 5 years ago, I wanted to get back into it, and I started training for an event called the Tecumseh Off-Road Marathon. It's a 26-mile marathon in southern Indiana. And I started out okay, did all right, about halfway point, twisted up my ankle a little bit and started suffering that. Man, I got out of my rhythm, and by the time I made it to the 23rd mile, I didn't even feel like it was my body. I felt so bad. By the time I crossed the finish line, I had pretty much told myself in my head, wow, I don't think I'm going to be able to compete in this event like I used to be able to, and it's just what is in it if I can't feel good about finishing these events. Mm-hmm. So that was my last running event. I sat around for about 2 years, and a year and a half or so, and I was just sad human being, man. And so Lisa, my significant other, just sitting around in bed one night, we were sitting there looking at our computers, and we were talking about what can find. There's nothing out there I could find that can even replace what ultramarathon events gave to me. I don't like team sports. I can't say I don't like team sports, but I'm not good at team player, because if I'm having a great day and somebody's having a real bad day, or vice versa, if they're having a really good day and I'm having a really bad day, I don't want to, I don't really do good with team sports. I like individuals. I like individual sports, and I do like the competition. I do like that. I like the competition of self also, of yourself, and those isolated sports like endurance running, and when you're out literally 48 hours of a 500-mile cycling event, you're out in the middle of Wisconsin by yourself for hours. That's really gives you an opportunity to do some soul searching. There's no sport out there that I thought could replace that. And then she says, why don't you Google bicycle powered kayaks? And we laughed at that. And we were like, oh, that'd be hilarious, wouldn't it? If they don't have a bicycle powered kayak out there, I'm going to invent one right now. And I Googled it. And it came up. The first thing I saw was a Wilderness Systems 135 radar kayak with the Helix pedal drive sticking up out of it. I said, I'll be damned. They actually have a kayak. Check this out. And I started searching into it. Immediately, I got into kayak bass fishing, the KBF. Mm-hmm. Saw Chad Hoover, his name sticking out there. And then I saw a very familiar face. And I'm looking at it and going, gosh, I think I know this guy. Now, I do this a lot. I don't know if I do have a talent in facial recognitions. I'm not sure, but I can look at your face and I can see in Amsterdam again in like 20 years and go, hey, I know you, Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking at this guy holding his check, and it was a check for $42,000. It said, kayak bass fishing national champion 2017, Kurt Smits. And I said, I'll be damned, I know this guy. Well, I knew him from the 90s and mountain bike racing and the ultramarathon events. And Kurt was a big mountain bike racer. In fact, he had a bike shop down in Terrace Park for many, many years on Route 50. And I said, I'll be damned. This guy's from here. I know this guy. They actually have kayak bass fishing championships and event. Mm-hmm. That's all I needed to see. I immediately joined KBF, which I shouldn't have. And I should have waited. This was in October.
Oh,
I should have waited until the beginning of the year to join KBF.
And here's why.
And because that was my rookie year, right there, from October to the end of the year. But
it's not a year from when you sign up. It's actually starts in January and ends in December.
Yeah. So that was my big mistake, because the following year I did 36 tournaments. And a lot of the rookie of the year are like class participation points. You know, you show up, you get so many points for doing this and doing this. And I had the time. I'm kind of a semi-retired right now. So I'm finding this. And I absolutely, it just, lo and behold, you know, there's the event, there's the sport that replaces what I was looking for. Showing up in the god-awful hours early in the morning with a few like-minded crazy individuals. You start the event, you disappear for hours. Sometimes you never see them, sometimes you do. You come back hours later, you beat up, you got stories, somebody gets an award, they have a raffle, and you all go home. And not only are you out there competing against the other people in the event, but in kayak bass fishing, you know, I don't have to tell you, you are competing against yourself, mentally and physically, trying to figure out the patterns, the formulas, what's making a bite. The mental game is actually more challenging than running. Running's pretty simple. You just start, you finish. You know, you just try to keep yourself together and keep yourself from losing your mind in a long distance event. Not fishing, man. It adds a little caliber to it that's very demanding on the mind, which lays a whole other physical thing. You know, it starts draining your physical when your mind's not working and you feel you don't have your rhythm on and stuff. Your physical starts falling apart. So, wow, here's the sport that absolutely replaced it for me. And man, I love this sport. So there's my passion. It's not really from something that I've done my whole life. You know, fishing's just something I've kind of did here and there, but I hope to do this till the day I die. And when I do, put me on the top of a kayak and set me on fire and just kick me out in the middle of the pond.
That's the way to go, man. Ashes to ashes. Some people go back into the ground. Some people go to dust. Some people go into the lake.
Just
that's where I want
to
go. Take my ashes and spread it in the ocean, lakes, rivers, streams, ponds, all that stuff, man.
Yeah,
that's amazing. So, what was your first kayak? What was the first one you actually bought?
Well, when I saw the picture of the Wilderness Systems 135 radar, I clicked on that. It took me to a location down at right down the street at Old Town Milford called Roads, Rivers, and Trails, RRT. And
I love it.
Just great young group of very enthusiastic. You know, I'm at the age now where I call them kids, but man, you know, I walked in there and I met Brian the next day. I had some time off. I said, let's go in here and check this thing out. So me and Lisa and myself, we walked in there and I met Brian, and I thought he was just one of the, you know, workers there. You know, I had no idea. Hey, good seeing you, buddy. I love you. I'll call you up. I got to say goodbye to my son real quick. Come here. Come over here. Say hi to my son. Look at this good-looking kid right here, man. Zach, what's up? This is my son, Johnny, right here. Nice to meet you, Zach.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Hey, I love
a bunch of fishing nuts.
I'll see you later. Have fun. Okay, I will. I'll give you a call when I make Orlando. Okay. I met Brian, and I thought he was I didn't realize he owned the place. So I'm talking to him just like he was some young kid, you know. And I told him, was very direct in telling him that I was, I had already had American Tackle as a sponsor at that time. It was fun because I had let me rewind a little bit. Before I got the Wilderness Systems kayak, I did have a sit-in kayak, which was a Field and Stream 12-foot kayak I bought at the big box store for $249. And I had that thing sitting around for a number of years. That's how I could catch the big bass out in the island at the pond here at the Rock and Star Ranch. But I would not consider that thing at all my first real kayak. And still not even knowing that they had kayak bass fishing tournaments. But when I clicked on, I saw that Wilderness Systems 135 radar. I went down to ROT, and he had that same exact model sitting right on the floor. I fell in love with it immediately. The Helix pedal drive sticking up out of there just made so much sense to me. I had a little retirement money that I was going to spend on something, and I can't think of a better way to retire, really. And I was really wanting to buy a bass boat, I was really trying to put my head around $25,000, $30,000 bass boat. So when all of a sudden this KBF kayak bass fishing thing just came to fruition, I saw it and I said, doesn't this just make sense when I can put $3,000 into a kayak and be able to enter these events that have pretty good money out of a plastic boat, and I don't have to haul a big bass boat around. I don't have to put oil and gas in it and maintenance cost and insurance. And Lisa's looking at me going, yeah, that sounds like a real good plan. And so I bought it right there. I bought that Wilderness Systems 135 radar. He gave me a great deal on the floor model, and I immediately put that thing to work. I love that thing. And in fact, the more I love my Hobie Pro Angler 14 that I got, that I've upgraded to, but the more I am in the Hobie Pro Angler 14, I realize how much I really love the Wilderness Systems 135 radar. And I've been using that this whole, past couple tournaments, I've been using that Wilderness Systems. I love the Hobie for certain things. I love the Wilderness System for certain things. And Cowan Lake is a perfect lake for the Wilderness Systems 135 radar. I like working that structure, and I like getting in and out and in and out. I can work doing that in that Helix pedal drive, forward and back, and I don't have to touch that reverse and forward, pull on that Mirage drive. So I can keep my rhythm going. And I'm all about rhythm, especially throwing those crankbaits like I like to do. I just love working the rhythm and staying on it. And that's the old ultra marathon stuff coming out of me, to develop a rhythm and just try to keep that going. And that pedal drive is perfect for that, where the Mirage drive kind of challenges that whole rhythm a little bit, because you have to take your hands off the casting and down and shift gears and make sure those are popped right and the fins turn around. And but stability, you get out in East Fork Lake, like we were that one day, there's nothing like the Hobie Pro Angler 14, because I can drop that big keel at the bottom of that thing. It's great. But
the Hobies handle big water well.
Yes,
definitely.
Yeah.
What all did you catch your fish on at Cowan? Did you throw a crankbait all day? I know they call you Crankbait Johnny.
I love the crankbaits, that's for sure, and they work for me there. I hold tight to that structure. The first, interestingly enough, I just picked up this little 4.5-foot finesse rod. This thing just bends like a blade of grass. It's hardly got anything to it. And I was picking it up because I'm really trying to work on my Ned rig techniques and understand that whole thing a lot more. Because I've been throwing the crankbaits, I'm not slowing it down. And there's like that hot stuff, man. I got to start learning how I can slow this stuff down in my presentations. And the Ned rig is just phenomenal. So I got me a little finesse rod because I lost my good American Tackle toxic biohazard spin casting medium finesse rod in Lake Barkley. That's got about 60 foot down to Lake Barkley.
It's gone.
It's just gone. There it goes, real slow. Like, oh God. So I got this little rod, and it felt good with those little Bushido American Tackle Pro Staff square bill crankbaits. It just feels good with it. And I don't know if I'm doing something right. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but I can catch fish this way. And when they bite it on those light action rods, it just holds in. It seems it holds a little bit better, and I'm not jerking that thing out of their mouth. I'm not. And those 6 hooks, those 2 treble hooks, are doing what they're supposed to do, and they bring that fish into me, and it's nice and smooth and easy. I guess if it works, you keep doing it. Well, I lost my first big fish on a square bill, and it was a nice one. It was probably 16, 17. It would have at least got me on the leaderboard nice and early. I like doing that, early time. I love tossing them up there real fast. I don't like holding on to my fish photos. That petrifies me. If you lose your phone, then you've lost everything. I like getting that stuff in as soon as I can. So I lost that first one, kept throwing the crankbaits, and did that. Really caught the other 2 on the crankbait, but didn't catch the other one until I was over on the other side with Dawson. But then I wasn't feeling good, man. It was just by luck that I think I just kept tossing this out, and I don't even really remember. I was really starting to go bonkers at that point in time, but it was all crankbaits I used. Obviously I thought tying a whopper plopper on there, and who knows, I probably should have gone with that whole.
So you didn't use the net at all?
No, I didn't use the net at all during that.
See, that's what I caught most of my fish on. Actually, all of my fish except for one small one I couldn't score because it's like 9 inches. I threw a chatterbait early in the morning, a black and blue chatterbait, and I caught one. And I just, took a long time to get that bite. I switched over to the Ned rig and started catching fish. And what I was doing, I was casting it over into the shady spots, like under those trees and stuff right off the bank. And I was just popping it up, just working kind of slow. That's what I caught most of my fish on. Now, I got a funny story. My daughter wanted to FaceTime me. So I took a break from fishing. I laid my rod down on the front of my kayak. And I had my Ned rig was hanging off of it. And I don't know, it's probably maybe a couple foot under my kayak, maybe even not even a foot under my kayak. And I was sitting there on the phone talking to her, and I feel this yank on my foot. And I look down on my rod going yank, 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 yank. So like, hold on, baby, hold on. So I take the phone, stick it in my pocket, and I start reeling it in. And that was my 13 I scored.
That's amazing. That's testimony to how quiet a kayak is.
Yeah.
That's some real testimony.
Right under me.
That's amazing. So now Dawson, he was doing a lot of different things. He was like, he's a really active visual fisherman. He uses a lot of spinner baits. For instance, there was a lot of blow-ups on the other side near the beach. He was between the beach and the island. They were just blowing up shad all over the place. As soon as he'd see a blow-up, he'd grab a spinner bait, just toss it and let it sink down for a couple feet. And bam, they were just hitting that stuff. He was picking them up like that. And he was also tossing big purple worms, 7-inch worms, tossing them up on the bank, bringing them down. They'd hit that. He'd toss. He was changing a lot, going from lure to lure to lure. If they hit one or if they just bite on one, he'd immediately toss another one over at him. So he was doing that a lot. Man, it was working for this kid. And I've co-angled with him before. We've been on the back of a Lane Bull Outdoors, his bass boat, and we both have co-angled. I've taken a couple trips with Dawson, and he's always produced good fish. I didn't know if he would enjoy the kayak bass fishing, but man,
like you did.
He's going to be fun to watch. I'm going to probably hate it one day that I introduced him to the sport.
Hey, it's more competition, man. It makes it more interesting, right?
Yeah, that's true. There's always the raffles.
Yeah. So I know you don't have a whole lot of time, and I think you're going to record Paddle and Fin tonight. I know. Tell us about your podcast, man, because when I first met you, what was it, at a Cowan tournament, and it was Brian Tasty's tournament. It's a Cincinnati kayak fishing tournament, and you won biggest bass, and I was standing beside Justin Marshall, Brad Hicks, and that was actually Brad Hicks' first tournament he'd ever done. His brother Cody did the tournament, and my friend Wes Groves did the tournament. That was his first ever kayak tournament. So I seen you walk up, you got your plaque, and you walked away, and I'm like, Justin looks over to me like, "Do you know who that is?" Like, no. He said, "That's John Graves." Like, who's John Graves? He has a podcast on Podbean, and he talks about his kayak fishing and the tournaments and stuff he's done. So that's kind of how I met you the first time. I started listening to your podcast, and then I know we had the Leveling Canoe and Kayak tournament that was supposed to be the river tournament. They ended up going into Cowan Lake. And then I actually met you for the first time, introduced myself to you at the bar right before the captain's meeting when we had the bar, little meeting at the captain's meeting. But yeah, you seem like an interesting guy. I know me and you've been on several fishing trips, here and there. We went to Peyton Creek, East Fork, Stone Lake a few times, You're definitely an interesting guy, and your podcast is really interesting. So my question is, like, what got you into podcasting? Like, what gave you the idea to start your podcast? Because you seem really good at it.
Well, I think I used to be a big fan of a podcast called News from Lake Wobegon, which is a Garrison Keeler production. And it's a real slow kind of talk. It's just news from a town called Lake Wobegon. And we were talking about these old radio shows and stuff like that. And someone had mentioned podcasts, and someone said, "Man, you should do a podcast." And I'm like, "Well, what do you do in a podcast?" And they said, "Well, you just sit around. I guess you just talk to yourself." and I said, "I'm like really
crazy people.
I could do that. I can, I don't have a problem at all doing that." And so they said, "Well, why don't you try a podcast?" So I looked into it, and Podbean was really the first one. It's pretty simple format. And I just kind of picked it. Let's go with this one and see what it does. And stayed out most of the winter. I think I've got 42 episodes on there, which is kind of surprising to me. I didn't realize I had that many, but staying out. It was a lot of time in the tack room out there with the horses in the barns and just talking to an old gray barn cat and talking about, my experiences really through fishing, really starting at Lake Cave Run, which was my first experience in a kayak bass fishing tournament out of state. And just really talking about that and how I'm learning through really by making mistakes, because I have no problem jumping into things. Just I will jump into fire, no problem. Let's do it, and that sometimes gets me into a lot of trouble. So, but I learn through this sport, and that's really what the Podbean podcast is all about. I knew it would be a good way to really kind of put myself into a social media format. And again, I'm 55 years old, so I saw analog turn into digital, and I can really appreciate the ability for me and you to just sit. I mean, this is Star Trek stuff to me, man, to be able to sit here and talk to you and to be able to do something like a podcast. So I'm really fascinated by that. I'm very aware of marketing and how strong a tool this is for companies like American Tackle to have me and you sitting here talking about, their products and putting their name out, and this has the reverberation of going out to thousands of people. So I can really appreciate that. And it's just enjoying it that way. I would actually consider myself more of a social media fisherman than I would a really talented tournament fisherman. I go out there to have fun and come back with some stories and try to learn as much as I can. But I'm very fortunate, to be this young into the sport. I mean, not my age, but only have been in the sport for, really a couple years, heavy into it. And man, have the opportunity to go to ICAST and have been qualified for the KBF National Championship coming up in April. I am so blessed, and it's just one of them Forrest Gump serendipitous moments, and I'm rolling with it, and if this is where the good Lord wants me to go, then I'm going to go here. But this sport is just blowing my mind, Zach, how much fun it is and where it's going.
It's got a great brotherhood. There's not as much drama as there is in the bass boat world, but there still is a lot of drama. But it's, everybody helps you out, man. I've had total strangers in the tournament with me help me unload my kayak. People just go out of your way to help you. We're always looking out for each other out on the water. Man, that's why I fell in love with the sport, just the brotherhood of it. And social media fisherman pretty much explains me to a T. And I think it explains a lot of guys, in our group of friends that we're all social media fishermen. We all post on Instagram, everything we catch. We post on Facebook. I run a podcast now. I post on YouTube. I do channels. I do have several YouTube channels. One basically just me catching turtles and fish off my kayak. The other one's actually my new podcast, the Buckeye Kayak Fishing Podcast. I'm working with the Buckeye Trail, the Buckeye Kayak Fishing Trail, interviewing all their winners. Whoever will want to come on and talk, and I think it'll be awesome. I actually got an episode I'm recording tonight with the winners for the Buddy Bass, but it's a secret right now.
Oh, that'll be exciting.
Tell you at all.
That'll be exciting.
I know who won, and the two guys that won, and I'll be talking to them both tonight. So be looking for that episode to come out tomorrow, and then they're going to announce on their Facebook the Buckeye League is going to announce who won that tournament, because I've been curious, and I'm kind of wanting to see where I placed in. When it's all said and done,
right?
All the pictures are judged. Because I remember the one part of that morning I was at 11th place, and I think I texted my wife. I said, "I'm in 11th place. That's awesome." And then it was like an hour later, I got bumped down to like 26. Like, oh man, I had all that hope. It just got shattered.
Yeah.
And I caught more fish, and my numbers went up, and then I went down again, and I'm probably down again now. But
it was a slugfest. The top 5 was an absolute brawl.
Oh, it was, man. So I know we're about to wrap this up, but we like to play a little game on here. Yeah. It is the fishing scenario game. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to give you 3 real quick scenarios.
All right.
And you're going to tell me how you go about fishing.
Okay.
So the first scenario is you're on the Ohio River and you find a tributary that goes off. The tributary is only probably 10 foot wide at its deepest.
Yep.
I'd say it's midsummer like it is right now, so the water temperature is kind of warm, but it's a river and it's a creek, so the creek temperature is a little bit colder than the rest of the river. Right. How would you go about bass fishing now?
Well, hold on 1 second. I got to put on my thinking cap.
Oh wow.
Okay.
For anybody that doesn't see the video, John just put on a crazy device on his head. It looks like a hat with tubes sticking out of it.
Adds a little pressure to my brain here. I'll just add a little pressure. What's that pressure reading there? Can you tell?
About 30.
Okay, that's not bad. Good job.
30 pounds.
I'd start throwing crankbaits at that point. Right there. Would they be shelved now? Now, is there some shelves coming off of that tributary?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so I'd be hitting those shelves up, and I love starting to throw those crankbaits. That's how I've been doing it. And then through those crankbaits, as long as I'm touching dirt, as long as I'm touching the surf, down there in that deck, I know I'm somewhere. And, I haven't been using any electronics this year. It's been those crankbaits, those deep diving crankbaits that have really been my fish finders. So, I'd start off just like I've been doing just hit that up, thinking that they're going to be hitting those big schools of shad going up in there. Would that be right?
Yeah, sounds good, man. That'd be great.
Wouldn't that be, I think that's what I haven't fished the Ohio River a whole lot, but, very seldom have I, but that's probably how I'd go that. And what's the second one?
All right. You're at Cowan Lake, right? Yeah. You're in a midsummer day. Our theme here lately has been summer. You're a midsummer day and you got 2 hours of daylight left. What are you throwing?
Oh, 2 hours of daylight left. I'm going to be throwing, can I have a couple things to throw?
Yeah, definitely.
I think those whopper ploppers are good. Couple hours of daylight left, keeping them up tight up underneath the shade, trying to whack them bushes with it. any kind of to make a little surface. I think they're back into their feeding. They're late afternoon feeding, kind of just hitting up everything. And I think at this point in time, even though I haven't had that much experience with them, I think I'm going to start tossing those Ned rigs. Start really for my finesse fishing. Those would be my combination. I'd hit the surface and I'd hit the bottom.
Gotcha. Awesome. So number 3, you're in a creek, all right, and it's only probably 4 or 5 feet wide. You can barely get your kayak down it. It's muddy, and it's probably late spring, so we're talking 60-degree water temperature.
4 foot wide, very muddy.
I know a creek inside a county just like this that I catch channel cat and people caught bowfin out of.
So it's muddy. So you got a muddy creek. It's about 4 foot wide. Is it running pretty fast, or it's just wide and slow?
It's got spots, man. You go down the creek and there's a few rapids, and then it goes real slow in spots.
Oh man, I would just try to get up that rapid and see if you could find any clear water and hit the top of those points. Eddies, there's not much of an eddy in a 4 foot creek.
I wanted to come up with something goofy as the last one.
But I like to fish a pond like a big lake, and I like to fish a big lake like a small pond. And so I would probably fish the small creek like a big river. But you just got to micro scale everything down. I don't know if that would make sense or not, but
use smaller presentation, like the wee rubber ball. That's something I like to use in small bodies of water like that. Right. And I know there's actually a lot of guys that like to specialize in micro fishing, where they use tiny lures and tiny baits and catch small fish out of ponds.
Yeah, you'd be
little creeks and stuff.
Yep. And you can get them fired up with those small baits too, man.
Yeah.
Get them fired up with that. So.
Oh, definitely, man.
Let me take that 30 pounds of pressure off my brain now. There we go. Did that work out?
Yeah, you did good, man.
All right, man. I just put that helmet together the other day. So.
That's awesome, man. Well, I guess we're going to wrap it up for today. Like I said, I had a few announcements. One of them being at my Buckeye Kayak Fishing podcast. I just started it. There's probably 2 episodes out. I don't think we're on Apple podcasts yet. I think today is July 8th. So anybody listening, if you're listening in the future, it might be out then. But so far that's coming out. Also, I kind of got something else in the works too that I'm not really gonna give a whole lot of hints about, but possibly a third podcast completely unrelated to fishing.
Nice.
Another hobby that I have that I'm collaborating with some of my friends. So I might have more details on that. Besides that, I have some YouTube stars possibly coming on the show. So I have some interesting guys from YouTube. I won't give that away yet until I got everything set in stone. But I know tomorrow I'm recording with some YouTube stars that I'm pretty excited to talk to. And so I'm hoping that goes good. I love doing the Yak Legion podcast. I know we've had some ups and downs here recently. We've had switching out the co-hosts. And, we had some people that didn't work out. And it's been up and down, man, but I'm still trying my hardest to keep this podcast going, keep it going every week, keep our posting consistent. And I really appreciate you coming on tonight, man. I know Chris was out tonight. It was just kind of me and you. I figured we'd sit around, talk about fishing, good old times, and it was a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, thank you. It has been. It's been a really fun, unique experience to meet you. And to see you just catch on fire here with this whole podcast thing. I think you got a great voice for it, man. I mean, your voice you got a killer voice, and it sounds good in the media. You ask interesting questions. You keep it fun and entertaining. I think you got a big future in this stuff, man. And I'll tell you this right now, man. You can put $250,000 behind a tournament bass fisherman, and you can put your name all over his bass boat, and you can put clothes all over his back, and you can vinyl wrap his truck, and he can go out and hit every one of the tournaments. But if he's not making the top 5, he's probably not making the news like somebody like you, man, is doing, and the word that you're getting out. So You're valuable. You're really valuable at what you're doing. And I'm going to let them know that down at American Tackle when I see those guys. And, I get to meet the president and Darren, the vice president, for the first time ever. And, no longer are we going to have this social media, family thing going on. I'm actually going to sit down and be able to talk to these guys. I'm going to let them know that, man, the American Tackle team guys up here are killing it with the social media. So big kudos, man, and thumbs up, Zach. Keep it up and keep up the Yak Legion Podcast.
Yeah, buddy. Dan, thanks a lot, man. That means a lot coming from you. I appreciate you coming on, buddy.
Okay, man. Thank you. And I'll give you a shout out or chime in if you want to. Give me a little heads up. Maybe we can get a little podcast or something from iCast.
Yeah, great, man. I definitely want to hear how your trip went when you got back. When you get back.
Okay, man.
All right, American Tackle guys, we're out.
See you, buddy. Thank you.